Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool strap review for you guys, a bracelet from Uncle Straps, formerly known as Uncle Seiko. A little bit about this brand. It's a strap and bracelet maker made popular by the Seiko mod community, now expanding into aftermarket bracelet options for Omega and even Tudor. But this particular model is one that I've had my eye on for a long time. This is their Z199 bracelet, and it is fitted to my Slim Turtle. In particular, it's the SPB 333 110th anniversary Save the Ocean limited edition, and I think this is a lot of fun. Of course, I pretty much wore this watch pretty exclusively on an anthracite gray rubber tropic strap, as well as kind of testing it out on various NATO style straps as well. But the bracelet was calling to me, although this model does come with a 5-link, closer to almost like an engineer kind of pilot style bracelet, which didn't really resonate with me. Nothing wrong with the fit or finish or anything like that, but for me, ultimately, I thought the design just wasn't as cohesive as I would have liked. So I've always had my eye out, and of course, Uncle Straps, they always come through. They offer something, and I think this really flows beautifully with it, and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so some of your first questions are going to be, is how does the finish match up? Because this does have a Dia Shield hard coating versus no hard coat. And some of you can probably tell, and some of you probably can't tell, who knows? But I will say to my naked eye, I can tell a slight difference. This is a little bit darker, this is a little bit brighter, but to the naked eye, while you're moving, while you're wearing the watch, I actually don't think it's an issue at all. I do wish that this brand and others would experiment with applying a clear DLC coat, because that's what a lot of micro brands are doing essentially, and it is able to add a slight tint, and of course does also add extra scratch resistance. Unfortunately, the problem is once you scratch the coating, then you would have to completely scratch off all of the coating if you wanted to refinish the watch. Now, I will say that these types of coatings hold up really well, and the Dia Shield that Seiko uses isn't even one of the stronger ones on the market, and it does keep things looking quite pristine, so I can appreciate that. But in terms of just the tone on tone matchup, I think it works, especially because of the contours, of course, within the bracelet are always going to have the light playing and moving, so you're rarely going to have an instance like this, right, where you're really exposing light on the same kind of plane here to where you can compare it a 1-to-1. Typically, it's going to be at some angles like this or something like that, right? So it's going to be reflecting in different ways, and you're not always going to have, again, certain surfaces all lined up and lit up all together at the same time. So that is something to keep in mind. But now a little bit about these in terms of the dimensions: 20 millimeter down to 16 millimeter taper. This is 180 millimeters, and then after it's adjusted, you can get this down to 120 millimeters. This is 316L stainless steel, and it does have a milled folding section. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to teach you guys a little trick. So one thing I'm not crazy about is this friction clasp mechanism. It can be a little harsh because it is stamped. Although this is, of course, milled, the bracelet clasp itself is stamped, which is nice in terms of that flow visually it doesn't add a lot of heft, and it just really completes that look. But if you don't want to hurt your thumb here, what trick is you can actually lift up on the back and it will actually unclip. So even when this is brand new and it's pretty stiff and it's a little bit hard to open, you know, if you have sensitive fingertips or anything like that, and you're worried about having to really dig in there or dig in with a nail, again, the trick is you just push from the backside. Of course, one of those things means that you will, you know, of course, have to have extra links in there. It probably wouldn't work the same way if you had this out to its last extension. What I like to do, especially on these types of clasps, in general, I like to have as many links as I can in there, so it just gives me a lot of room to play. Of course, I have to dial it in terms of the fit. But again, yeah, that is just a little trick. I'll give the clasp a little wipe off now. Nicely signed, guys. Again, the proportions are just fantastic. And then in terms of the aesthetic, I think it's actually quite handsome. But I will say, of course, construction-wise, I do wish this was, you know, milled, possibly with some triggers like he does on some of his other clasps. But I can also understand that he wanted to keep the silhouette quite true to form, while giving you the milled section underneath, which is you know, going to be more important at the end of the day in terms of feeling nice and secure. This definitely does the job on the friction fit side. It's not ideal, but at the same time, did I mention the price on this? It's only $99, so I don't think this should be really a deal breaker for anyone. And again, if you are concerned, you can always flip up, and that is how it's going to come off. Now, this, it just looks awesome, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you, I really, really enjoy this aesthetic. And again, I have been really just loving this typically on an anthracite tropic strap because it ties into that bezel. But there's something about the steel on steel that really just plays, and you know, maybe it does something a little extra to this dial in terms of helping it pop. So I do appreciate that, and I do really, really like the way this looks and the way this feels on wrist. Another thing to mention is that this does have quite a few removable links, and the links are screwed in. Check them out. So screw in links, which is something a lot of people look for. Everything is going to be brushed. You know, this Z199 style is pretty similar to something you would think of like a Jubilee. It just has a bit of a different contour to it, and of course is all brushed. But I believe this contour looks amazing with this slim turtle case because it does have some rounded features. It also has some crisp edges as well, which I think really pairs well and just flows with the overall aesthetic of the slim turtle, not just my variation here. I also have the 317, which is the traditional, you know, looks a little bit more like a 6105, an old school 6105 8000 than this one, where it of course has that beautiful glacier dial. But with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Normally I'd cut away for something like that, but why would I do that if this is a strap feature versus a watch feature? So you guys can see, really look at that. I love this taper. It's something that you won't get with that factory strap, so it just flows visually for me, guys. And again, that little mismatch in terms of tone on the steel, really not you know, functionally any type of issue there. It you know, in practice, this looks really great. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens there, you're going to give it a perspective distortion. And this is a pretty good example of, if you take a look at the links, right, this is going to look much larger, but all I'm going to do is drop my wrist down, and all of a sudden you're seeing a lot more bracelet, right? So what I like to do is just tighten up the frame just a touch so you guys can have a detailed look while still getting a truer aspect ratio of how this will sit possibly on your own wrist. And maybe some of you have been holding back on getting the black slim turtle, because it does come on a strap and not a bracelet, because you were looking for an aftermarket bracelet option. So this could really be helpful for you guys. Again, it's this model, the 333, does come with a bracelet. I just, it just didn't really resonate too well with me, but I have to say this definitely does. This is very, very slick, and it just adds a whole new dimension to the watch, while also just feeling very organic and flowing with the existing design aesthetic. I love the taper on the bracelet, guys. So again, for all intents and purposes, this visually fantastic. It would be nice again if this was fully milled, just even if it did add a little bit of thickness, just so you wouldn't have to worry about any of that kind of sharpness around some of the stamped edges. But here's the trick: you just pull on that and there you go. So when you do first get this, I will say there is a bit of a breaking in period, and if your fingertips aren't ready for that, you might get quite frustrated. Of course you can adjust, but just popping that in and out a few times will help break it in. But again, you don't have to worry, because you can just lift up the back and there you go. So let's go ahead and get back to the show here, guys. There's not really too much to say. Again, this is a strap showcase versus about this watch. If you guys want to watch the full review for the watch, I'll definitely put that in kind of the end cards of the video. But I did want to showcase this piece for you. Just beautifully done. I love the way it flows. The fitment in the end link is great. It butts up against the case quite nicely. You can see there is a peak of it's not, and it sometimes can look, depending on the reflection, if it's reflecting off something dark, you might think there's a gap, but there actually isn't a gap. It actually sits really well. This is something where you can see where it's actually comes up, that polished surface there. So this is a flat surface, but the end link does butt up against it quite nicely. So there's no gap, there's just that polished surface, which depending on what angle you have it in, it may reflect the dark reflection, which might make it look like, hey, the visually might look like a gap, and it's not there. You can see, if you look at the fine edge, not quite a perfect match, but I wouldn't expect that from this type of end link anyway. Of course, this isn't the only Z199 bracelet that they make, so I totally understand that much of the tooling adjustments are going to be done on the the lug end that faces the watch versus the kind of outer portion, which is going to be more of a universal shape. And if you guys do play pretty close attention to end link bracelets, a lot of times even the OEM ones don't have a perfect flow, at least not when you're thinking about larger scale brands. I will say some micro brands really do get into that and really do geek out about all the lines lining up and flowing together, but for the most part, it's not a deal breaker to see something where the end link shape, it doesn't have a perfect one-to-one carryover of each line, each kind of crevice. As long as it fits nicely and there's not a lot of gap, of course you're going to need some level of gap, because you're going to remove the bracelet and put it on and off. You're going to want to be able to get it in there, so you don't want the tolerance to be too tight. But here they're able to get the tolerance nice and tight, of course, with the help of these pierced lugs. The drilled lugs means that you can just poke those in and disengage straight on, versus having to kind of leverage one in to each side at a time. So all right, rambling quite a bit. Really appreciate you guys checking this out. Hopefully some of you made it till the end, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.